everyone, my name is Kim Vermaak. I am the author of the book series, The Chronicles of Nadine, and welcome to Author Chat. Today we are going to be chatting to Richard, who is the author of Puzzle Island, and our topic today is managing book finances. So welcome, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a great pleasure. I'm just going to quickly share with everyone your credentials, which are extremely impressive. So as an author, we want to find out first about who the author is. So Richard was born on the 14th of December, 1974, Hutchinson's, England, which means that he is my junior. You've got more grey hair than me.
I've got, yes, plenty.
So what really intrigues me about Richard, which we'll chat about later, is he was educated in England in a castle. And since that I write medieval fantasy, that really excites me. So his passion for writing gripped him when he turned 40, and he had a dream of people stuck in a wooden carriage one night, and it was a spark that led to the adventure story that is The Puzzle Train, a contemporary novel about adventure, mystery, and the logic of puzzle solving. But Richard is an accountant, and his accounting career started all the way back when 1992. So you're quite a veteran, Richard. He's worked
yes.
in a variety of industries such as biotech company, manufacturing, international foreign currency supplier, food franchises, and to name but a few. He also, and my heart goes out to you because his wife has got a business and he runs her books as well. So we have an entrepreneurial family, and that can be quite challenging. And Richard was brought to South Africa to implement new accounting software by a former employer. So that's Richard's credentials. So we're going to stop the share screen and I'm going to hand it over to you, Richard. I just want to ask a couple of key questions for just to guide our viewers. So one of my things that I wanted, besides the normal stuff that authors want, you want to create a book, create a legacy, it intrigued me that you could actually take books, turn it into a career, and it could actually become a retirement plan. So I've watched a lot of people that have worked their whole life. They have a retirement plan, and then when they actually need that money, it has dwindled down so badly with inflation that there's almost nothing to live on, and they have to sell their home, maybe move in with their kids, and then the dreadful dog story, the dog food stories that we hear about people. And that's just really a terrible place to be in. So I realized that if you've got a book catalog and you're selling at whatever the current rate is, you basically can outperform inflation, and you don't have to keep on slaving away day after day because you've got something that you can produce. However, as a business owner myself, I know that managing your books and running a business can be tricky. And sometimes we get caught up in the glamour of being an author, but we don't always understand what the financial implications are and how to manage that. So before you start sharing with us the finance stuff, tell us a little bit about Puzzle Train, which, by the way, everyone, I've actually got a copy of the book.
I've also got a copy here.
I know. I have to say, I shared with Richard the other day that I got a little bit baffled with some of the clues. So I handed it over to my daughter and her boyfriend, and he loves working out puzzles. And then he taught me a little cheating hack, but I'm not going to share it with anyone because I want them to suffer like I suffered through the book.
I hope you didn't suffer too much, because that wasn't the intention.
Well, I did say that I was no longer going to read your book at night because it overstimulated my brain and then I couldn't sleep. So definitely daytime reading, unless you are one of those that can actually sit up until 4 o'clock in the morning finishing a book, then read it at night, but otherwise, no, daytime reading only. Okay, Richard, you go for it and tell us more about your book and then speak to us about finance.
Thank you very much. Well, it's very nice to hear that it's keeping you up at night anyway. It's good that it's not sending you to sleep, so that's a good start. So my passion for writing came very late on in life when I was 40. And I've been an accountant for a long, long time, and it was never really fulfilling my deeper needs. And I really needed a creative outlet. So I tried a few things, and I was working with my wife, who's a life coach, and she did some exercises with me, and turned out that writing was what I wanted to do. So at the same time, I spoke to my daughter, Isabel, who's actually one of the characters is based on her in the book. And she was 11 at the time. That's the reason why everybody's 11 in the book. And she said she was going to write a book. And I thought, well, if she says she can write a book, then I can write a book. So I sat down and I started writing. The dream came to me one night about these guys stuck in a wooden carriage. Reminded me of an old-fashioned train carriage. So I thought, okay, well, let's put some puzzles in there and try and work the way out. And that's basically how it all came about. So yeah, and then so Puzzle Train was the original book, and then came Puzzle Island. So it was taking the puzzling concept a little bit further. And just recently, Puzzle Castle's come out. So that again is building again on the story and bringing in some backstory between the adult characters now as well to develop. So it's not just puzzles. So Tom is obviously Tom, the main character, gets a little bit older in Puzzle Castle, and there's a few things going on there. And I've thrown in a few bad guys as well, just for some fun. So in terms of turning a book writing hobby into a career, I mean, it's not easy. I think anybody will tell you it's not easy. You've got to, first of all, you've really got to put the effort in. Writing is a lot of effort, and sometimes it's not particularly glamorous sitting in front of your laptop all day. That said, I enjoy it immensely. I get a great thrill out of sitting down and creating and writing. So, you know, in order to have a good business, you've got to have a good product. That product has got to start with your book. So I think in the beginning, be prepared that this book is going to cost you some money. It's worth spending the money on getting a good cover design. It's worth spending the money on getting a good editor. And then basically you want to sit down and make that product as good as you possibly can, so that then it's ready to sell in the best state that it could possibly be. So then the second key to selling a book is obviously getting people to know that your book is out there. And that again is not easy. As anybody's tried to market a book will tell you, there's a lot of people out there selling books at the moment. That said, it's never been a better time to try and sell a book. I mean, 20 years ago, authors like us could have only dreamed of having the worldwide outlet, which is Kindle and Amazon and Smashwords and everything else that goes with it. So that's it's like a dream. It's like having the keys to the sweet shop. You just got to walk around and make sure you've got a basket to fill it up. So getting people to know that you're out there is key. And there's various different ways you can do that. I mean, Kim, you introduced me to Story Origin. You pointed me in that direction, so I've started there. That's a great way to meet people and to expand your network. Getting on Goodreads, you know, promoting yourself wherever you can is all important to selling, basically. If people don't know you're there and you don't know you've got a great book, then you're not going to sell it. It's going to be incredibly difficult. So you've really got to network. You've got to get yourself out there. You've got to get your marketing right. Even spend some money on a marketing expert in the beginning if online marketing is not your thing, which is not my thing. And I did. And I think it's good. It's money well spent. So you've got to get your Facebook right, your Instagram right, and there's Pinterest, and there's whole lots of different ways you can go. Even LinkedIn if you're writing sort of business style books. It really is a case of getting out there and seeing what's about there, and having a good website as well and driving traffic to your website. Having your book available for sale on Amazon is key. That said, once you're there, then it's great. Then this is where my personal preference of writing a series comes in, because all the hard work you do with marketing that first book, you can then piggyback on for the second book. I know, Kim, you're writing a series as well, so yes. That's yeah. I mean, I only have a plan to write 3 in my series, but it's actually going to be 5 now. So as time goes, you learn the lessons, you know what works. You've started off with your first book, and then you can piggyback on that. People are used to the characters. You get some good feedback, get some good reviews on Goodreads. Then there's no reason why it can't take off. There's no reason why you can't be a success. So in terms of the nitty gritty now with the bookkeeping, it's well worth keeping a track of your expenses. You can do this in a book, just write it down in your diary, make a spreadsheet. It doesn't have to be anything complicated, but just understand that in the beginning it's going to cost you money. Get quotes for good editors, get quotes for good book covers. You can go and look on Fiverr for book cover designers, graphic designers. Look on Facebook for writers groups, see what other people are using, get good contacts from there as well. So be prepared, it's going to cost you in the beginning. Obviously I'm an accountant, I'm still working. But my advice is, if you're writing that chapter 1, book 1 right now, is to put some money aside. It'll be a good idea to put it aside for your editor. Definitely get a good editor, I can't stress that enough. Have a good product. Have a well-written grammar-proofed product out there, and then there's no reason why you can't achieve sales. And once your book is written, then there's nothing stopping you selling it and selling it and selling it. Move on to book 2, book 3. All the time, just remember, and then just remember that you are going to spend money in the beginning and to recoup at the end. And spend it wisely. You don't have to spend thousands. You could be very frugal. You can leverage off your network, find writers groups on Facebook. That's my advice to edit. There's lots of people out there who are willing to promote you. Lots of people out there who are willing to read your book for free. I actually bumped into somebody locally who was going to read my book and put a review on Goodreads for me. And that's what it's all about. More good reviews means people are going to look at that and they're going to want to read your book.
Well, that's excellent. I need to ask you a couple of questions that I've learned along the way.
Sure.
There are a couple of software options in terms of accounting. Some of them are paid, some of them are free. If you were starting out, because a lot of our authors actually starting out with like no money to invest in a book, what would you do in terms of accounting? And if you can explain as well, I know there's two questions over here. Sometimes people see royalties on Amazon and they're like, yeah, you have made so much money. But explain the business concept of break even, so that people can really understand what that means. That, you know, what are your your initial investments? How would you manage that? And you know, when is that time, that tipping point where you say, okay, now I'm actually making real profit?
Okay, so for the first part of the question is, my advice is don't bother with an accounting software. It's definitely in the beginning. I think it's a waste of time. You spend all your time trying to learn how to use it, and it won't really add any value to your life. You can just keep a book, just keep a page in a book and just write everything down that you've spent as you're going. That's my advice. Now, if you're going to produce a physical book, there's a few things you need to take into account. Obviously, all your time you spend writing it is not going to cost you any physical cash, but it is obviously time invested, and you want to return on that time as well as the money you're going to spend. So the money you're going to spend is, you're going to spend money on an editor, you're going to spend money on a cover, and you might spend money having it printed. And so what you want to do is you want to work out what you want to sell that for at the end of the day, and also where you're going to sell it. Distribution is incredibly difficult for physical books at the moment with lockdown. I had a conversation with the distributor only yesterday, and she said she's expecting a lot of book shops to actually close, unfortunately. So she's moving on to a more online model, which I think I've always felt South Africa is a few years behind, certainly the UK, in terms of online buying. But I think it's had to improve recently with the whole COVID and lockdown thing. And I think people are going to start trusting online sales, and people are going to buy more online as we move into the rest of the year and next year. So your book is obviously going to cost you your printing costs. It's going to cost you your delivery costs. My books are printed in Cape Town, for example, so my delivery costs I also need to factor in. So if you want to factor in all of your costs, and then you're going to basically add up all your costs together, your printing, your editor, your cover, and then work out how many copies you're having printed. Now, all these economies of scale with printing, the more you print, the cheaper per unit it is. But shop around again for quotes. There's plenty of printers out there at the moment. Some are great, some I haven't used. Always try and get a quote. So then basically add up all your costs and divide it by the number of books you're having printed, and that's your cost per unit. Then you can work out what your selling price is going to be. So then obviously you want to recoup your cost per unit. Now your editing costs and your book cover costs, they're what we call in the accounting trade as sunk costs. They're spent. There's nothing you can do to get those back. So really, you want to just be looking at your printing costs. And as a rule of thumb, you want to sell your book for double your printing costs. That's a general rule of thumb. That will take into account, obviously, the printing cost itself, and then wherever you're distributing it to. So maybe you're selling online. Bid or buy is a great place to sell. Take a lot is expensive to get into. And yeah, and book fairs are great. Book fairs and craft markets. Some places charge to set up a stall, some places don't at the moment as they're trying to encourage people to come back. So keep a note of all your costs, work out your cost per unit, try and double it as a selling price, and make a note of everything you sell. Now, obviously, I should say any profit you make on your books is taxable, and you should declare this to the Revenue Service.
How do you go about that? Because if you are a full-time employee, then you're going to declare whatever your salary is, and then there's going to be this trickle of commission that's going to come through, or royalties that's going to come through. But you've spent all of these different costs. So how do you reflect that in a way that SARS is not going to penalize you? And I wanted to share a personal story over here to show you the severity of it. Quite a few years ago when I was running my corporate gifting business, my husband was working as a car salesman, and I gave him the name of someone who would buy a vehicle, and the dealership paid me out a finder's fee. It was about R1,000 finder's fee. I forgot about it. And the company that he worked for actually submitted a tax, RP5 for that R1,000 commission. And I had completely forgotten about it. I was a little bit late in my tax return. My accountant hadn't submitted it. And SARS picked up that there were two amounts. So R1,000 turned into a R7,000 penalty from SARS because they implied that I was cheating on my tax return, whereas it wasn't a normal form of income for me. I just absolutely forgot about it. So I'm very mindful of the fact that, we can be writing, but SARS knows how much is going into your bank account. How do you manage that if you're working full time and then you have to submit this extra income from your books?
My advice is to get a good tax accountant. My speciality in accounts is business finance rather than personal taxation. So my advice is make a note of every single transaction, every single cent that comes in and out, whether it's from your Amazon account or whether it's you selling your books to your friends and family. Make a note, ins and outs, that's all it has to be. At the end of the day, you take your ins, you deduct your outs, and that's your taxable profit. But my advice is get a professional to help you with the returns.
Super, that's great advice. Yeah, I wish I had thought about that beforehand. But in any case, so Richard, I really appreciate it. One other thing that I want to cover, which a lot of authors don't realize, is if you are doing a physical copy and you're going to go into bookstores, just to take into the account what they take for the book.
Yes.
So, at Amazon, you get like a really high percentage of your royalties, but physical bookstores, they take quite a bit. So how does that work out when you're doubling your book price? I might think that if I paid 100 Rand and I'm selling it for 200 Rand, 100 Rand is my profit. But when you're working with the actual physical bookstore, how does that work in terms of what you're actually going to get back?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is if you're using a distributor, you normally get left with 30%. Now the bookstore takes 40. So, sorry, let me start again. First of all, your book price being sold by the bookstore will include VAT. So first of all, the first thing they're going to do, the bookstore's going to do is take off the VAT to get to a net price. So that's 15% off straight away. That net price is then split 40% for the bookstore, 30% for the distributor, and 30% for the author. Now, I took the decision that I was going to make a loss on some of my books because I wanted them in the bookshops, in the big bookshops. So that 30% I'm going to get doesn't actually cover my printing costs. But that was a tactical decision I made, knowing that I was writing a series. Some of the smaller bookstores and the independents, you can actually approach as an author, and some of them will take your books, and they will only charge. So then that immediately eliminates the distributor cut. And some of the smaller bookstores aren't registered for VAT, so the money that they take is the money that they then use to distribute between yourselves and them. So it is worth approaching your local independent bookstores. Don't try with the big brands, exclusives, etc. will not see you unless you're a registered distributor. So as an author, make friends with your local bookstores. Try and get it in there, but yes, you're right. I mean, do accept the fact that they are going to take a cut, and that cut will vary depending on the bookstores. So some will take 20%, some will take 40%, for example. That depends on basically on the guy who's in charge and how much he'll take.
Okay.
But as an author, it's really nice to see your book in a bookshop.
It is. And then, of course, there's always the tricky part of that when they pay. So a lot of the bookstores are only going to pay 60 days after the book is sold. So you provide it in terms of consignment. You don't get any money up front. And then once someone has bought your book, then they're going to pay you 60 days after that. So... Which I think that's one of the reasons that the Amazon model is so attractive, because they actually do. Oh, sorry, I've got a lot of background noise from the little ones. But they give you a print-on-demand option, so you don't have to go and print 50, 100, 500 books. They will print them as the customers order them. So for those people who are worried about finances in terms of starting out your author career, that's an exceptionally good model to get known, and then you can make the decision afterwards if you want to do a physical book or not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's no cost associated with Amazon at all up front. You just make sure obviously your documents in the right format and upload it, and away you go. I mean, that's a great model. Obviously for the downloads, the purchase price is a lot cheaper. I think my book's on at $1.99, but then there's no cost associated with Amazon. So by the time they take their cut, actually you're left with a lot of the money left over.
There is a small sort of cost involved in terms of the ebook, but it's not an upfront cost, and it's what they call their distribution cost. Yes. And that's very important for people who've got a lot of graphics in their novels, because graphics increase the size of the file. So there's a small little amount that they take for the what they consider to be costs of downloading that file or uploading that file. And so if you've got a lot of graphics in your book, you need to speak to someone about reducing the size of the images so that it doesn't take up too much. It's a little tiny hidden cost. I mean, it's negligible, but if you're going to have a highly graphic intense book, that's something that you might need to manage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the other thing is, of course, is Amazon is global, and then they won't just pay into your bank in South Africa. You've got to actually go through a Pioneer account. I'm not exactly sure what the charges are associated with that to get your money out. The actual account is free to set up, but there's almost certainly going to be transaction costs when you withdraw your money. So that's also another thing to look into.
I love Payoneer. I've been using it since I started the book. What people do need to know is they will not release any money until you've reached a minimum of $50 in that account.
Right.
So your royalties will add up until that point, but it's actually a very easy process. So you link your bank account to their bank account, and then they originate a UK bank account, a Japanese one in the States, a whole bunch of bank accounts, and then you load those bank accounts onto Amazon. Amazon pays round about, I think, the 29th of every month, and then once you reached your $50, then you can actually pull it out. And that was quite important for me during COVID, because my business obviously shut down completely. My husband is a trainer, and he works on contract, and so his contracts got cancelled until further notice because he trains inside a classroom. Yeah, that Payoneer account, the international royalties that we got for the books, that really helped us in the beginning. I mean, I'm going to be very honest, I didn't have any savings. So if it wasn't for the book royalties, we wouldn't have eaten that month. So, you know, they always say, dig your well before you're thirsty. And I'm so glad that I actually did have that extra stream of income. So
Yes.
Richard, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. I think it's been very, very helpful. Tell us a bit more about Puzzle Train before we leave, and how people can find the book.
Okay, so Puzzle Train, the book is based around a TV show called The Puzzle Train. There are 6 carriages. Within each carriage is a puzzle, and the contestants have to solve the puzzles within the carriages. So Tom is the main character. He's 11. He wins his opportunity to go on the children's special with his best friend Isabel. And then they, despite his wishes of his stepfather, and they meet up with some good friends, and they work through their puzzles.
I think you're underestimating his stepfather. I mean, Flip, I actually wanted to jump in the cage and slap him.
That was, yeah, he was meant to be a pain.
I am a stepmother, and that is really bad PR for step parents. So the Step Parent Association is going to be in contact with you shortly.
Yes. So the book is available on Bid or Buy, or it's available from, you can contact me through the Facebook page, The Puzzle Train. You can email me on the Puzzle Train series at gmail.com.
Excellent. Richard, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. And yeah, I hope that authors are going to now see 2 things. Number 1, you can make money off a book. And number 2, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It takes work just like any business. And I always say to people, you treat it like a business and it will pay you like a business. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate it. You have a stunning day.